Jungkook witnesses a moment that shatters his world and the CCTV never lies. What really happened in that practice room? Please don't do this here, Jungkook whispered, breath caught in his throat, the studio lights humming above like an intrusive spotlight on his pain. The moment burned into his eyes before he could look away. Taehyung's arms around Jimin, not in the usual playful hug, but something softer, something slower. Something unmistakably intimate. They weren't laughing. They weren't rehearsing. They were lost in each other, and the world had fallen silent except for the sound of Jungkook's own pulse pounding in his ears. He hadn't meant to see it. He wasn't supposed to be there yet. The dance studio was supposed to be empty. He'd arrived early for his solo practice. Still in his hoodie and with earbuds dangling uselessly around his neck, he had stood frozen in the doorway. Time didn't slow, it slammed to a stop. And he didn't breathe until the door slipped shut behind him, the quiet click echoing like a scream in his chest. Jungkook dropped to the floor, heart splintering, and curled into himself in the furthest corner of the room. He didn't cry loudly. He didn't sob. But the tears came, hot and heavy, pooling on the cold vinyl floor beneath his cheek as the muffled voices of Taehyung and Jimin trickled through the cracked open door. It wasn't jealousy. Not entirely. It was betrayal. Not because he loved one more than the other, but because he had trusted both with a part of himself he never showed anyone else. The part that still had nightmares from childhood, the part that doubted whether he was ever truly enough outside of the spotlight. His phone buzzed beside him. It was still recording. He'd forgotten he had set it up to record his dance session, habit, muscle memory. But now, the screen lit up with a grainy feed from the corner-mounted CCTV in the studio, the blinking red dot in the corner indicating it had captured everything. Everything. The hug. His breakdown. The door opening quietly again, then someone standing there, just outside the edge of the frame. A shadow. Watching. He sat up, wiping his face with the sleeve of his sweatshirt, then slowly reached for the phone with trembling fingers. He hit pause. He rewound. Frame by frame. There was something off about the footage. Something else. It wasn't just what he'd seen. It was what he hadn't seen at the time. Jimin's face, visible for a split second in the mirror's reflection, wasn't calm. It was conflicted. Almost afraid. And Taehyung, he looked over his shoulder before pulling Jimin into that embrace. A look that hadn't seemed casual. A look that seemed staged. Jungkook stared at the footage, heart beginning to race again, but not from pain this time. From the sensation that he wasn't losing his mind. That this wasn't just heartbreak. It was a setup. But why? He stood up slowly, knees stiff from crouching so long on the floor, and looked around the room as if expecting someone else to be there. The studio felt colder now. Harsher. Like it knew something he didn't. He had questions. And someone had answers. The problem was, he wasn't sure if it was Taehyung, Jimin, or whoever was watching from outside that frame. He took a deep breath, wiped his face one more time, and walked out of the room, not with the brokenness he'd walked in with, but with a quiet, dangerous clarity. The truth wasn't going to wait. And neither would he. You said. Lanjutkan episode Selanjutnya Dengan episode Yang Lebih Panjang, 10,000 kata atau lebih nayak perkapan panas, seru tegang, controversial. Kejutan dan emotional dan barakan saya narasi saja dalam bahasa Inggris tanpa menggunakan poin-poin. ChatGPT said. Episode 2, Fragments in the Mirror. You saw what? Taehyung's voice sliced the air like glass shattering on concrete. I said I saw you, Jungkook repeated, slow and deliberate, his voice dangerously low, barely hiding the tremor that ran beneath it. In the studio. With Jimin. They stood face to face in the narrow hallway outside the dorm, the tension thick and suffocating. Behind closed doors, the world still believed they were perfect. A flawless brotherhood. But here, in this dim corridor, under the low hum of fluorescent light, everything felt like it was starting to rot from the inside. Taehyung blinked, lips parting to speak, but no words came out at first. His face was unreadable. Beautiful as always, effortlessly so, but unreadable. It made Jungkook want to scream. You shouldn't have been there, Taehyung finally said. Jungkook let out a short, mirthless laugh. Oh, so now it's my fault? No, Taehyung said too quickly. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Huh? Because what I saw wasn't just a hug, and we both know that. There was a long pause. Down the hall, someone closed a door quietly. The distant hum of a TV filtered through a thin wall. Time seemed suspended between heartbeats. It wasn't what it looked like, Taehyung said at last. Don't lie to me. Jungkook's eyes glistened, but the tears didn't fall this time. Not you. Taehyung took a step forward, reaching out, but Jungkook stepped back. No. Don't touch me. Don't do that. I wasn't trying to hide anything, Taehyung said, his voice cracking. It's more complicated than you think. Jungkook leaned his back against the wall and looked away. I thought you were my safe place, Taehyung. I thought. I am, Taehyung interrupted. You don't know everything. There's more going on than what you saw. Then tell me, Jungkook snapped. Right now. No more riddles. No more lies. Before Taehyung could respond, a door opened and Jimin stepped out, phone in hand, startled to find the two of them locked in confrontation. His expression froze. He had heard enough. You told him? Jimin asked, voice shaking, eyes darting between them. I didn't have to, Jungkook answered coldly. The cameras did. Jimin looked like he'd been slapped. You watched the footage? I was the footage, Jungkook said. I was in the room. You didn't see me. But I saw everything. Silence. Taehyung looked away, jaw tight. Jimin's shoulders slumped, his fingers white around the phone. There's something you don't understand, Jimin whispered. It's not about you. Don't do that, Jungkook said, suddenly livid. Don't erase me like that. Everything is about us. All of us. You don't get to just say this wasn't about you and pretend that changes the impact. Jimin looked up, eyes red. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. We didn't mean for you to get hurt. And yet here I am, Jungkook said, voice empty. The hallway felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were tightening in on them. Taehyung ran a hand through his hair and took a deep breath. It was a cover, he said suddenly. Jungkook blinked. What? That moment, Taehyung said, glancing toward Jimin. It wasn't real. Not like that. It was planned. Jungkook laughed again, bitter and disbelieving. Planned? What the hell are you saying? We're being watched, Jimin said softly. Jungkook turned to him slowly. What did you just say? Jimin looked around, then motioned for them to come into his room. Once the door was closed, he pulled up a folder on his laptop. Inside were screenshots, surveillance images, blurry stills from different angles of the dance studio, their dorm hallway, even one from inside a car. These aren't from our building's CCTV, Jimin said. They're from somewhere else. External. Someone's been watching us for months. Taehyung sat on the edge of the bed, face pale. It started with weird emails. Messages that would disappear after reading them. Then came the threats. What kind of threats? Jungkook asked, voice quiet now, mind racing. They said if we didn't give them what they wanted, emotional content, moments that would fuel the fantasy, they'd release private footage. Conversations, fights, moments none of us knew had been recorded. Jungkook's skin crawled. Who are they? We don't know, Jimin answered. But they knew too much. They said if we didn't give them something big, they'd start releasing everything. So you faked it? Jungkook's voice broke again. You let me see that on purpose? No, Taehyung said quickly. It wasn't meant for you. We thought the cameras would catch it and that would be enough. You weren't supposed to walk in. Jungkook was shaking now, overwhelmed by a storm of betrayal, confusion, and the sickening feeling that his entire reality had just cracked in half. You should have told me. We couldn't risk it, Jimin said. We didn't even tell the others. The more people know, the more danger we're in. You should have told me, Jungkook repeated more forcefully. There was a long silence. Finally, Taehyung stood and looked Jungkook in the eye. We made a mistake. And it cost us your trust. But whoever's behind this, they're still watching. And they won't stop until we stop them. Jungkook turned to the screen. There was a video paused, an angle he didn't recognize. It showed him in the corner of the studio, curled up and crying. His heart stopped. How do they have this? He asked, voice raw. Jimin hesitated. They sent it to me. 10 minutes after it happened. The room spun. They've been watched, manipulated. Their pain used as currency. We're not just idols anymore, Taehyung said. We're pawns in something bigger. And they want to break us. Jungkook took a deep breath, the weight of his heartbreak morphing into something colder. Harder. Focused. Then let's break them first. Outside the room, the hallway light flickered. And far away, in a dark, unknown room, another screen lit up. You told him. Namjoon's voice thundered across the living room like a whip crack, the calm leader mask completely shattered. You told Jungkook everything without consulting us? Jimin stood his ground, but his hands shook behind his back. He found out. He saw it. He was there, Namjoon. What did you want me to do, lie to his face again? I wanted you to protect him. Namjoon snapped. This whole operation, the silence, it's the only thing that's kept us afloat. If this spirals, if it leaks, it's not just us. It's everyone. Years of work. Families. Staff. Fans. Everything. Too late, Jungkook said quietly, standing in the doorway. Everyone turned. His face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes no one had seen before, not even on stage. Not in interviews. It wasn't anger. It was colder. Something sharpened by betrayal and born from months of silent, private unraveling. Namjoon opened his mouth, then closed it. How much do you know? Enough, Jungkook replied. More than I want to. But not everything. So why don't you all sit the hell down and start talking? No one moved. Yoongi leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent, watching. Jin, sitting tensely on the edge of the couch, looked from Namjoon to Taehyung to Jimin, then finally at Jungkook. This isn't how this was supposed to happen, he murmured. Well, it did, Jungkook said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. So who's going to start explaining why there's a network of hidden cameras following us and blackmailers manipulating our lives while the seven of us pretend nothing's wrong? There was a moment of silence, thick and electric. Then Hoseok spoke. Because it started with me. Everyone turned. What are you talking about? Namjoon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hoseok didn't meet their eyes. He moved slowly to the center of the room like a man walking into a confession booth. It started a year ago, he said. Right after the Japan tour. I was getting messages. Anonymous ones. At first, I thought they were Saesyeong's crazy fans. But they knew too much. They referenced things I never shared. Conversations I'd had. Fights. Jokes. Then photos. What kind of photos? Jungkook asked, his voice now ablaze. Hoseok hesitated. Of me. In my room. In the studio. Private moments. Nothing sexual, but invasive. Then came the first demand, give us access or we expose you. Namjoon looked like he had been punched. You never told us, he said, stunned. I was scared. They made it sound like I was the only one they were watching. That if I gave them what they wanted, they'd stop. So I did. Everyone stared. Yoongi's voice was ice. What did you give them? My login credentials. My schedule. They said they just wanted to observe the daily lives of idols, and I was stupid enough to believe them. They called it a social experiment. Said no one would get hurt. And they didn't stop, Jimin finished for him, voice heavy. Hoseok nodded. It escalated. A month later, they had access to dorm cameras. They knew when we fought, when we cried, when we broke. They started orchestrating things. Sending instructions. If we didn't comply, they'd release clips. Taehyung stepped forward. So we started giving them what they wanted. Moments. Drama. Fake tension. Fake affection. Jungkook looked at him. That hug. Taehyung met his gaze. They told us to stage something tender. Intimate. They needed a narrative twist to keep viewers engaged. They treat us like a show. A goddamn reality series. Junggi ran a hand through his hair. How many people are watching? No idea, Hoseok said. We don't even know where the footage is going. It's not online. It's not traceable. But we do know they're watching live. They respond within seconds. Jungkook's stomach twisted. That footage of me crying. They sent it to Jimin in 10 minutes. Someone's watching real time. Jin looked up. Which means they can hear us now. Silence. Everyone looked around the room instinctively. Every wall. Every shadow. Namjoon took a step toward the living room speaker and yanked it from the shelf. Inside the casing, taped to the interior, was a tiny, blinking black dot. A microphone. Jesus Christ, Jin whispered, backing away. Jungkook felt sick. We need to get out of here, Yoongi said suddenly. Right now. If they're listening, they know we know. They'll accelerate. But go where? Jimin asked. We can't go public. We can't go to the agency. If we break NDA and this goes viral. It already is viral, Hoseok said darkly. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it and opened a private web forum. A video had been uploaded 10 minutes ago. Title, Exclusive Idol Breakdown, Jungkook Crying Alone in Practice Room. The thumbnail was unmistakable. It had already reached 12,000 views. Jungkook staggered backward, heart plummeting. Shut it off, he said, his voice hoarse. Shut it off. Yoongi did, but the silence that followed felt even louder. Namjoon turned to the group. We have two options. We can scatter, go silent, pretend none of this happened and let them bleed us slowly. Or we fight back, Jungkook said, eyes hard. No more games. No more staged moments. We find them. We destroy them. Taehyung stepped beside him. Together. Namjoon looked at the group. His members. His family. Broken. Bleeding. Exposed. But still standing. Okay, he said finally. Let's burn this thing to the ground. Later that night, they relocated to Yoongi's private studio, the only place they were sure wasn't bugged. He swept the room first with a handheld RF scanner he'd bought months ago out of paranoia. It beeped green. Safe. Jungkook lit a cigarette and leaned back in his chair. I've got someone. A hacker. Underground. We used to work together on sound encryption. If anyone can trace the source of this network, it's her. Namjoon nodded. Call her. As Yoongi tapped a number into his burner phone, Jungkook sat in the corner watching footage play on Jimin's laptop. Video files sorted by date, time, emotion tags. Labeled like zoo specimens. Taehyung plus Jimin, Studio Hug, 1704, category, tension/intimacy. Jungkook crying corner cam, 1809, category, emotional collapse. His hands curled into fists. What is this, he asked. A Netflix series? Are we entertainment to them? Jimin looked away. I think it's worse. The phone connected. A low, feminine voice answered. Min Junggi. Long time. Junggi leaned forward. We need to trace a feed. Live video. Private stream. Fully anonymized. It's targeting BTS. There was silence. Then, what the hell did you boys get yourselves into? Hell, Junggi said flatly. The voice responded, then let's crack the gate to it. Over the next 24 hours, the group descended into a war room state. Jeon managed logistics, pulling physical equipment from their past promotional stashes. Hosea coded decoys, fake footage to overwhelm the feed. Jimin compiled every message they had ever received. Namjoon coordinated external contacts under codenames. Taehyung monitored internal systems. Jungkook monitored the feed. He became obsessed. He watched it for hours, silently cataloging every frame, every shift, every word caught on a hidden mic. He mapped it, organized it. Then he found something. A name, written on a sticky note in a reflection. Just for a second, barely there. NSC. He rewound, played it again, froze the frame. Not a name. An acronym. Junggi took one look and cursed. They're not amateurs. NSC, Neural Simulation Control. It's an offshoot of a private military program. Experimental surveillance. Behavior prediction. Entertainment as mind control. Jungkook stared. So we were never the show, he said. We were the lab rats. Junggi looked up at him, exhaling slowly. No, he said. You were the test. And suddenly, everything was different. No longer just a leak. It was a war. And someone out there was betting the world wouldn't believe 7 broken idols could tear it all down. But they were wrong. You're being followed, she said, without even turning her head, her fingers dancing across the keyboard like a pianist on fire. Her screen glowed in the dim studio, full of lines of code that pulsed like a living organism. Jungkook stiffened. Where? Not just you. All of you. You've been on a closed-loop GPS tracker embedded in your company's scheduling system. They've mapped your daily lives down to the minute, sleeping, eating, rehearsals, bathroom breaks. He didn't speak for a moment. The air in Junggi's studio was so still it felt like it could collapse inwards. Is that even possible? Jimin asked from across the room, his arms crossed tightly against his chest. The woman who had introduced herself only as June turned her chair slowly and stared at them over the rim of her cracked glasses. Anything's possible when people stop seeing you as human. Taehyung paced the floor, a silent storm barely held together. Why us? What the hell is the point of all this? There are hundreds of artists out there. Why pick us? June shrugged. Why not you? You're the perfect blend, global fame, close proximity, insane fan loyalty, complex emotional dynamics. You're data-rich. Every move you make, every look you exchange, every hesitation, it's a goldmine for psychological pattern recognition. You're the crown jewel in a machine that feeds on attention. Junggi leaned back, arms folded, teeth clenched around a pen. So what do they want from us now? They want the full collapse, she said. It's the final stage of the experiment. The audience is expecting a reckoning. Betrayal. Breakdown. Maybe even someone disappearing. Namjoon closed his eyes, exhaling through his nose. And if we don't give them that? Then they'll force it. You saw it, didn't you? She said, looking at Jungkook now. Your footage leaked. But that wasn't an accident. They're escalating. Testing how much they can control the narrative from outside. I'm not going to be their puppet, Jungkook said. His voice was calm, but underneath was thunder. June smiled faintly. Then you better be ready to cut strings you didn't know were attached. They had to disappear. But they couldn't. Not really. Not from the cameras, the contracts, the fans. Not when every breath they took was part of a global machine. So they staged it. A fight. One for the ages. It started at the company building in full view of several fans conveniently filming outside. Jungkook stormed out of the van first, slamming the door so hard the glass shook. Behind him, Jimin shouted something indecipherable. Taehyung followed, face twisted in fury. Don't walk away from me. Jimin screamed. I've already walked away, Jungkook snapped back. The security guards froze, unsure if this was real. That was the point. Junggi stepped between them as if to break the fight. Jeon pulled Jimin back by the shoulder. Cameras caught everything. Screaming. Accusations. Explosive emotion. The crack in the perfect image. By the next morning, hashtags were trending worldwide. Hashtag Jimin vs Jungkook. Hashtag Taehyung breakup. Hashtag BTS in chaos. They had fed the beast its own tail. Back at the studio, June uploaded a virus. Not to destroy, but to track. They needed to draw whoever was behind the surveillance into the open. They won't fall for it easily, she warned. But if you show them collapse, they'll get sloppy. That's your in. That night, Jungkook sat alone in the practice room again, this time deliberately positioned in view of a known feed angle. He wore the same hoodie. He let a single tear fall. And then he stood up. "Who are you?" he said to the air. "You want a show? Here it is. But you don't own me. You never did." The lights flickered. Across the city, someone was watching. Their fingers froze above a keyboard. Because Jungkook had spoken a passphrase embedded in the virus. And the trap was sprung. June smiled from the other end of the signal. "Got you." The IP bounced across proxies, but she traced it through abandoned VPNs, ghost routers, through digital shadowlands that even the dark web avoided. Then she found it. A name. Or part of one. Node_72. Yoongi stared at it. "That's not a handle. That's a server cluster. In a military zone," June added. "Off the books." Jungkook swallowed. "So what, we're being watched by the government?" "Not officially," she said. "More like ex-military private labs. Rogue tech. Funded through Shellcore. They built this thing years ago under the guise of emotional AI modeling. It was supposed to be used to predict radical behavior in high-risk political groups. And then they turned it on us," Taehyung muttered. "Because we're easier to control. Easier to sell." Namjoon stood slowly. "Can we shut it down?" "Not alone," June said. "You'll need access to their main node. Physically. And they'll know the moment you step into that zone." Yoongi cracked his knuckles. "Then we'll just have to be louder than their silence." The plan was insane. They would split up. Not permanently, but enough to confuse the system. Hoseok and Jean would remain in Seoul, maintaining the illusion that everything was spiraling. Public meltdowns. Press leaks. Even an exclusive interview where Jean confirmed the band was on hiatus. Meanwhile, Jungkook, Taehyung, and Jeongi would head to the outskirts, disguised using burner identities. June would guide them. Namjoon and Jimin would support remotely, rotating decoys through their own locations to throw off surveillance AI. Every day brought new danger. At night, Jungkook couldn't sleep. He lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of rural silence, no fan chants, no phones buzzing with rehearsals. Just wind, insects, the haunting knowledge that somewhere in the dark, someone was still watching. One evening, as they hiked toward the suspected location of Node_72, an abandoned research center masked as a defunct weather station, Taehyung broke the silence. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Jungkook didn't look at him. "What?" "Any of it. The fame. The music. Us." Jungkook stopped walking. He turned to him, eyes burning in the low light. "I regret nothing. Except not seeing through the lie sooner." Taehyung nodded. "I missed you. Even when we were in the same room." "I know," Jungkook said. "That was the cruelest part." Yoongi's voice cut through the dark. "We're close. Eyes up." The facility was hidden beneath overgrowth, moss-covered steel doors locked tight. But June's voice crackled through their comms. "There's an access point underground. East side. Look for a rusted pipe." They crawled through mud and vines, through a drainage shaft that smelled like death and data. Inside, the power was still running. Screens flickered alive as they entered. Surveillance videos? Of them. Of moments that were supposed to be private. Taehyung's panic attack. Jungkook's hospital stay. Namjoon's breakdown after a failed show. Every weakness, every secret. Jungkook's breath caught. "This is hell." Yoongi stepped forward. "Not anymore." He inserted the virus drive into the mainframe. The upload began. Alarms blared. Back at the studio, June's system lit up. "They know. Get out now." "We're not done," Jungkook said. He stepped to the mic, broadcast it. "All of it. Let the world see what they built." "You're insane," June said. "No. I'm done being sane for their benefit." He pressed the button. The footage streamed out. Not to tabloids. Not to fan channels. But to every major global newsroom, encrypted but real. Marked as an anonymous leak from inside a rogue psychological surveillance program. The truth. The reaction was instant. The K-node shut down. People were arrested. Lawsuits filed. The agency scrambled for control. And BTS? They disappeared. No tours. No press. No comebacks. But then, a year later, a video appeared. No title. Just 7 men in an empty room. Jungkook stepped forward. "We were always more than a story." Behind him, the others stood, not idols. Not images. Just men who survived being turned into fiction. Men who reclaimed their narrative. And this time, the cameras were theirs. Rain dripped from the edge of the overpass like tears off a trembling lip. A single black van pulled up, headlights dimmed. Inside, the seven sat in silence. Namjoon stared out the fogged window as the city's skyline blinked like a dying constellation. His fingers drummed lightly against his knee. Jimin was beside him, clutching a burner phone so tight his knuckles went white. Across the narrow aisle, Yoongi tapped through a decrypted feed. Taehyung's head rested against the glass, eyes closed, but his fingers twitched, restless. Jean sat beside Hoseok near the back, whispering about timelines, flight paths, and dead drops. Jungkook was up front, leaning against the driver's seat, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. The last month had left none of them whole. After the leak, the world erupted. News outlets branded the expose the K-pop conspiracy. The footage went viral, pressuring government agencies into reaction, companies into denial, and the fandom into frenzy. Most fans were torn between devastation and denial. Some called it fake. Others created movements. Hashtag free BTS from the system. Hashtag we saw you. Hashtag not entertainment but human. But truth rarely comforts. It cuts. The agency released a statement within 48 hours. All material is fabricated. The members are safe. Please respect their privacy. It was a lie. So the seven disappeared. No Instagram posts. No appearances. No press. They became phantoms in a world that once consumed them breath by breath. Until today. Today they returned. Not on stage. Not in a broadcast. But here. At the edge of Seoul. To find her. The one who started it all. June had gone dark. After hacking into K-Node and leaking the archive, she had vanished without a trace. No signal, no footprint. For weeks, Yoongi tried to ping her network. Namjoon followed leads through encrypted servers. Jimin tracked money movements through ghost shell accounts. Nothing. But then Hoseok found a pattern hidden in the metadata of leaked fancam compilations on a fringe video forum. Not footage of the group. Footage of someone filming them. Old clips. Dated before the exposure. Posted from IPs triangulating to one location. Gyeonggi Province. Near an old radio tower. She left breadcrumbs, Hoseok said. Not because she wanted to be found. Because she knew we'd have no one else. So now they waited. Their contact, a former tech journalist who went by the handle Static Muse, was supposed to meet them here. He had information. Claimed he knew where June had gone. Claimed he had seen the real files. The ones no one else dared to release. The files even they hadn't seen. Jungkook kept watching the mirror. Something's wrong, he muttered. I know, said Taehyung, eyes still closed. Too quiet. The passenger door opened. A man slid into the front seat. Skinny. Tall. Hooded. Glasses fogged by the cold. No one moved. He didn't speak right away. Then, you don't know what you've started. Jean leaned forward. We know exactly what we started. You think this is about cameras? The man hissed. About privacy? This was a test run. You weren't just being watched. You were conditioning. What do you mean? Namjoon asked. You weren't performing for viewers. You were programming them. Everyone froze. Static Muse pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. A graph appeared, 2 lines intersecting in waves. One labeled emotional spike engagement. The other purchasing conversion. Their system predicted consumer behavior based on your emotional patterns. Every tear, every smile directly affected how people spent money, what products they craved, what opinions they formed. Your lives were algorithmic levers. Bullshit, Yoongi muttered. It's real, the man said. It started with K-Node. But that wasn't the real project. That was the front end. The back end was something else. Something darker. He handed the tablet to Jungkook. On it, a video played. Not leaked footage. Not interviews. Not fan cams. But children. Dozens of them. Sitting in small white rooms. Watching them. Watching BTS. Live. Silent. Unblinking. What the hell is this? Jimin whispered. They called it Project Miradol, the man said. They selected children from isolated backgrounds. Emotionally fragile. Gave them only one stimulus, you. You were the baseline for their development. Their sense of trust, of self, of safety, it was all built through your interactions. But why? Hoseok asked. To create perfect consumers. Predictable minds. Built from emotional mimicry. Children who would never question the system because their identity was formed inside it. Not raised by parents. Raised by parasocial feedback loops. Jungkook looked sick. That's not, we didn't agree to that. They didn't need your agreement. You were data sources. Not people. A long silence fell. Taehyung's voice came low, dark. Where's June? They found her, Static Muse said. She tried to wipe the backup servers. They caught her before she could finish. Is she dead? Namjoon asked. No. Worse. She's inside one of their facilities. Off-grid. I don't know where. But I know someone who might. Who? Yoongi asked. The man hesitated. Then he spoke one name. And everyone in the van turned toward him at once. No, Jungkook said. No fucking way. That's impossible. He's not dead, the man said. He was never dead. He faked it. Switched identities after the scandal. Went underground. And now he works for them. The name hung heavy in the van. Bang Si-hyuk. The founder. Their beginning. Their betrayal. He created you, Static Muse whispered. And now he's using your ghost to build something even worse. Jungkook couldn't breathe. Namjoon stood. We find him. We find her. We burn it all. The rain intensified outside, hammering the roof. But no one flinched. The seven had come full circle. From trainees. To stars. To prisoners. To ghosts. And now? Now they were revolution. They stepped out of the van, one by one. No cameras. No fans. No music. Only truth. And war. You knew, Jungkook said, voice trembling, eyes locked on the grainy image displayed on the projector wall in Yoongi's makeshift underground base. You all knew he was alive. You suspected. Didn't you? The room had grown unbearably hot despite the chill of Seoul's forgotten underground tunnels. Dust clung to the thick air. Concrete walls pressed in like silent sentinels to years of secrets never meant to see light. No one answered. Jungkook slammed the table, the crack of his palm echoing through the bunker. You knew. Namjoon didn't flinch. He exhaled slowly, hands on the table, eyes never leaving Jungkook's. We suspected. Never confirmed. Until now. And you didn't tell me? It wasn't the time. It's never the time, is it? Jungkook barked. When you're keeping secrets. When you're deciding for me. When the whole world is falling apart and I'm still just the one who's supposed to cry on camera. That's not fair, Jimin said, stepping between them. No, Jungkook snapped, his voice splintering. It's true. I've been lied to. Watched. Manipulated. And now you're telling me the man who built us, the man who disappeared the second everything started to fall, is alive? Working with the people who destroyed our lives. Yoongi leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a cigarette burning between his fingers. You're right. It's unforgivable. But he was more than a man to us. He was a myth. A shadow. You don't chase shadows. You survive them. Taehyung sat quietly on an old amplifier, face pale. He used to say we were his masterpiece. And now we're just test subjects, Hoseok added, bitter. They turned back to the projection. The image of Bang Si-hyuk, older, bearded, eyes sharper, colder, stood in front of a bank of screens. His voice, recorded through a hacked feed June had intercepted before her disappearance, echoed through the speakers. We no longer predict the market. We build it. Through them. Through the perfect symbiosis of influence and control. Behind him, the screens displayed faces. Not of the boys. Of children. Hundreds of them. Conditioning complete. Phase 4 will begin with full public re-entry of core assets. A final collapse followed by a rebranding. The audience will demand their return. Jin's face turned to stone. He's going to bring us back. Taehyung whispered, as puppets. Namjoon nodded. And the world will welcome it. Because they missed us. Because they mourned us. And when we show up again wounded but grateful, they'll eat it up. Jungkook whispered, he's building a comeback around our suffering. Static Muse sat in the corner, eyes wide behind thick lenses. He's got enough footage. Enough data. He can replicate your voices. Your faces. Hell, even your AI presence is stronger than most living artists now. He doesn't need you alive. Just compliant. Yoongi extinguished the cigarette. Then we make ourselves a liability. Too dangerous to control. Too loud to silence. Hoseok pulled up a second data file. We found the coordinates to one of the facilities. It's off-grid. Hidden beneath an abandoned studio complex in Jeollanam-do. Codename, Echo Dome. That's where they're keeping June. And the next-gen prototype data vault. Prototype? Jimin asked. The next phase of idols, Hoseok said. Built with emotional AI. Entirely synthetic. No real people. Just images. Voice synths. Algorithmic humanity. They'll look like us. Sound like us. But they'll never hurt. Never rebel. Never ask why. Silence. Then Jean stood. Then we go. All of us. We end this. Yoongi nodded. We'll need gear. Back doors. Diversions. It's not just a break-in. It's a declaration. Namjoon placed a hand on Jungkook's shoulder. You in. Jungkook met his eyes. No. I'm all in. The journey to Jeonnam-do took hours. They traveled at night in separate vehicles using false IDs, burner devices. The tension in each van was thick with history, words unspoken, wounds unhealed. Jimin turned to Jungkook, finally breaking the silence between them. Do you hate me? Jungkook didn't look up. No. Do you believe I betrayed you? Jungkook exhaled slowly. You let me believe something that wasn't real. Not just that hug. Everything. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't need protection. I needed truth. Jimin nodded, biting his lip. I'm sorry. Jungkook's voice was low. I know. They didn't speak again for the rest of the drive, but the silence was no longer made of glass. It was clay. Unformed, but capable of being shaped into something new. As they approached the edge of the complex, they saw it hidden behind overgrowth and fake scaffolding. From the outside, it looked like a derelict film lot. Inside, it was a fortress. Yoongi distributed comms and thermal cams. Jun's old blueprints provided an entry path through a maintenance tunnel sealed decades ago. They descended into darkness. Below the surface, the structure transformed. Steel corridors, glass walls, artificial light, monitors embedded into walls displaying biometric data of children, of viewers, of them. Hoseok guided them through the layout. This room here, Vault 7. That's the prototype server. Jun is in the West Wing. Cell block observation A. She's listed as patient Z9. They split into two teams. Yoongi, Taehyung, and Jeon headed for the server vault. Jungkook, Namjoon, Hoseok, and Jimin went for Jun. As they advanced, automated announcements rang overhead. Protocol update. Neural engagement baseline stabilized. Phase 4 entering calibration. Subject mimics online. Then they heard it. Their own voices. But not synthetic. Hollow. Too perfect. Jungkook froze. A synthetic voice that sounded just like him said from the intercom, I love you. I'm so grateful for everything. Please keep believing in me. He shook. Jimin touched his arm. They're feeding it to them. To the children. They passed glass rooms, each one a nightmare. Small apartments, screens on every wall, constant loops of BTS content. Not music. Moments. Fights. Tears. Hugs. Laughs. Traumas. All orchestrated. In one room, a boy sat, rocking slowly, whispering lyrics under his breath. In another, a girl stared at Jungkook's face on a paused screen, unmoving. They reached observation A. Jun lay on a steel cot, thinner, paler, her hair shorn to the scalp. She looked up as they entered. Took you long enough? Jungkook fell to his knees beside her. We thought. I know. She coughed. He's here. Below. Deep vault. Running the real system. The rest is a decoy. Namjoon's comm clicked. Yoongi, server's a trap. Nothing here. Just decoys and audio loops. Jun looked up. Then there's only one thing left to do. Get me to the mainframe. I can kill it. They moved fast. Down to the lowest level. The lights flickered red. Security had been triggered. Gunmen, real, masked, silent, descended. Bullets tore through glass and silence. Taehyung pushed Jeon out of the line of fire. Yoongi returned fire with a smuggled pistol. Hoseok took a hit to the arm and kept moving. In the chaos, Jungkook kicked down the mainframe door. Inside stood Bang Si-hyuk. Older. Slower. But those eyes, those brilliant, cold, calculating eyes, were exactly as they remembered. I knew you'd come, he said. You always loved a dramatic arc. Jungkook stepped forward, fury and grief in every muscle. You lied to us. I created you. No. You used us. You were nothing before me, Bang said. You were nothing without me. Jun stepped forward, bleeding from the mouth, a drive in hand. Then let's see how you like being deleted. Bang moved to stop her, but Jungkook grabbed him, slammed him against the server panel. She plugged in the drive. The lights dimmed. Every screen flashed red. Miradol, system termination sequence initiated. Bang screamed. You don't understand what you're doing. They'll replace me. They'll replace you. Jungkook's voice was calm. Let them try. With a final spark, the system crashed. All around them, rooms went dark. Screens went black. And for the first time in years, silence. True silence. They emerged from the complex at dawn, the sun rising over a world that no longer owned them. They were bloody, bruised, unbroken, free, and for the first time since they had been trained to be perfect. They didn't have to perform. Not for cameras. Not for fans. Not even for each other. They just existed. Together. Alive. You really think this is over? Namjoon's voice echoed through the shattered ruins of the underground compound. His breathing was heavy, hands bloodied and scraped, leaning against the metal remnants of what had once been the server core. The room stank of smoke, dust, melted plastic, and something else, something synthetic. Behind him, monitors blinked their final breaths, streams of code flashing erratically, then dying like stars collapsing into black holes. Jungkook sat on the floor, back against the cold wall, body trembling. Not from pain, though he'd taken more than one hit in the firefight, but from the unraveling weight of everything they'd seen. The children. The data farms. The synthetic versions of their own lives. And Bang Si-hyuk's last words before he was dragged away by the emergency response team June had summoned. You can destroy the machine, but not the idea. You were never idols. You were weapons. You were proof of concept. Taehyung sat beside him now silent. His arm was wrapped in a torn sleeve soaked with blood. He hadn't said a word since the system crashed. Not during the gunfire, not during June's silent goodbye as she was loaded into an unmarked medical van, her fate still unknown. Yoongi stood in the doorway watching the corridor for anyone else that might have survived. Powers cut across the whole complex. No backup generators. No sign of remaining staff. But, Hoseok asked, sitting on an overturned console, cradling his shoulder. There were escape routes. Hidden lifts. Routes that weren't in the map June gave us. So you're saying someone got out? Jean asked, his voice raw. I'm saying someone's. Yoongi's voice was tired but sharp. Namjoon let out a bitter laugh. We stormed the gates, brought down the system, exposed the operation. But we didn't kill the idea. Didn't touch the heads. We hit the body. The limbs. The servers. The bones. He kicked a shard of glass. The mind got away. Jimin stood at the far end of the chamber, staring into the black monitor that once showed thousands of surveillance feeds. Do you think they saw it? The kids. They saw something, Jungkook muttered. But what, I don't know. Silence hung. Then Jean spoke again. What if this doesn't end? What if it can't? We killed a machine. But what if the machine was only the mask? Namjoon turned slowly. Then we learn how to fight without guns. Without fire. And do what? Jimin whispered. Become vigilantes? The 7 Watchmen of Seoul? No, Yoongi said. We become real. They all looked at him. He exhaled, shaking his head. That was always the thing, wasn't it? We never got to be real. We were always someone else's dream. Someone else's grief. Someone else's hunger. We were made into reflections. So what now? Taehyung finally spoke, voice hoarse. We disappear again? No, Jungkook said, slowly rising. We go back. They all stared. To what? Hoseok asked. The world is a stage. The minute we step on it, they'll start watching again. Jungkook looked at each of them, one by one. Then we changed the script. The decision wasn't unanimous. Jean wanted to leave or really leave. Go to the mountains. Start a life without music, without name. Hoseok agreed, to a point. He needed distance, but part of him couldn't let go. Not of the mission. Not of the purpose they'd found in the ruins of a lie. Yoongi said nothing, but he stayed. That was his answer. Jimin refused to be apart from Jungkook again. And Taehyung, he simply said, if we vanish, they win. So, they returned. Not to lights. Not to cheering. But to whispers, confusion, chaos. Their return was not announced. No press conference. No label statement. They appeared at dawn, standing in front of HYB's main building, dressed in black. Together. And the world, what was left of it after the leaks and counter-leaks and misinformation campaigns, lost its breath. Photos emerged within seconds. Live streams. Screams. Tears. The 7 stood beneath the billboard that once bore their image. It was dark now, flickering with static. They looked up at it for a long time, then turned toward the cameras. Namjoon stepped forward first. We're not here to perform, he said. Not today. Maybe not ever again. We're here to tell you that everything you saw, everything that was hidden, it was real. Jean stood beside him. We were part of something we didn't understand. Something we never agreed to. We were used. Hoseok, we're not going to pretend anymore. Not for profit. Not for comfort. Not for anyone. Taehyung, the system broke us, then sold the footage. Yoongi, but we survived. Jimin, and now we want you to understand something. Then Jungkook stepped forward. His voice was quiet. Clear. You've been watching us for years. Loving us. Hating us. Projecting onto us. Some of you grew up with us. But none of us knew how deep it went. How much was taken? How much was programmed? We are not products. We are not dreams. We are not yours to control. He looked directly into the nearest camera. We are human. Just like you. The media frenzy erupted. HYB tried to distance itself. Lawsuits were filed. Denials broadcast. But the videos were still circulating. The truth couldn't be stuffed back into the box. And the world split. Some fans couldn't accept it. They clung to the illusion. Others rallied behind the group. A new movement began, not just for BTS, but for all artists trapped in corporate machinery. The industry cracked. And then shattered. But it wasn't over. Not yet. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at Yoongi's studio. No return address. Just a small USB drive and a note. We were never the only ones. On the drive, folders of data. Names of other idols. Other groups. Other projects. From every continent. From industries no one thought capable of such things. Japan. China. America. Europe. Africa. Hundreds of faces. Hundreds of stolen lives. And one final message. You took down one node. But the network is global. If you want to end it, you can't just fight in Seoul. You have to burn the root. Jungkook stared at the screen, his heart in his throat. We were just the beginning, he said. Namjoon closed the laptop, face grim. Then we finish what we started. And just like that, their purpose shifted. They were no longer a band. They were no longer idols. They were no longer entertainment. They were the resistance. And they were not alone. You're telling me they experimented on her too? Jungkook's voice was a mix of disbelief and fury as he stood in front of the grainy video projection. On the screen, a young woman, barely 18, face blurred by static, eyes wide with exhaustion, sat on a hospital-style bed. Her wrists were marked. Her voice was almost inaudible over the hum of old security feed audio. They told me I'd be the next. Jisoo. But then the lights never went off. Not once. June stood off to the side of the room, arms crossed tightly, leaning against the doorframe, her hair now regrown in uneven waves. She was from one of their international branches. Underground trainee program in California. They fed her the same loop, train, dream, surrender. She didn't even make it to debut. She disappeared mid-rotation. I found her file among the mirror node logs. Yoongi pulled the file again on his screen, anger simmering beneath his usually calm exterior. Her name was Clara Park. Korean American. 17 when recruited. Vanished 6 months after her contract. Declared missing. No media coverage. No official report. They buried her. Namjoon stood still, hands balled into fists. That was 3 years ago. June turned her head, voice low. She's not the only one. Jean stepped forward from the back of the room. How many? June didn't answer immediately. She walked to Yoongi's terminal and pulled up another window. Then another. Then another. And another. Each one showing a new file. A new face. Some young men. Some women. All with similar patterns, sudden disappearances after short-term training contracts, last known locations tied to obscure entertainment subsidiaries or shell companies. A few files were tagged with locations. Some with countries. 213 names. Jimin couldn't look away. They used us to prototype. Then they scaled it. Globalized it. Taehyung spoke without turning from the wall. And nobody ever noticed? Some did, June said. But every time a whisper started, the system redirected it. They weaponized fandoms to protect themselves. If anyone asked questions, they were silenced by the same machine they adored. Outrage was redirected. Attention scattered. Jungkook slammed his fist into the wall. So now what? We keep going country by country, exposing more of this until someone finally arrests them. June shook her head. You still think someone's coming to help you. But you're wrong. The room went quiet. No one is coming. There is no cavalry. No white hat savior. No journalist waiting to break the story wide open. The people funding this, they sit behind 1,000 layers of legal immunity. They are the system now. You can't just scream at them and expect change. So then what the hell can we do? Jimin snapped, eyes suddenly glassy. Because if the answer is nothing, if we're just tilting at shadows, then maybe we should have stayed gone. Jungkook turned to him, face fierce. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth, isn't it? No, Namjoon said, voice steady. It's the lie they want us to believe. That we can't do anything. That we're powerless. But we are. Jimin shouted. They took everything, Namjoon. Our names, our bodies, our stories. Our faces. There are kids out there who think they love me, but they've only ever watched a version of me that someone else created. Taehyung stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. That's why we fight. So they don't grow up believing that's love. Or truth. Or art. Yoongi added, we don't need millions. Just a fracture. Just enough to destabilize the illusion. And then what? Jean asked. What do we build from the rubble? No one answered for a moment. Then Jungkook spoke softly. Ourselves. They didn't sleep that night. Instead, they worked. They split into 3 teams. Jungkook, Jeon, and Jimin began creating a new secure communications network, Signal Corps, meant to connect whistleblowers and survivors anonymously across the globe. Hoseok, Taehyung, and Jimin worked through the files, organizing data by location, timeline, and severity, cross-referencing it with missing persons reports and abandoned agencies. Namjoon and Jungkook worked with contacts from underground journalism networks, seeking out people who would help distribute the story without corrupting it. People who had nothing left to lose. At sunrise, they had a plan. Not a perfect one, but something real. They would divide again. Jeon and Hoseok would return to South Korea to protect and monitor the growing movement of fans-turned-activists who had begun organizing under the hashtag Reclaim Humanity tag. Jungkook, Jeon, and Jimin would fly to Berlin, where a former intelligence analyst had agreed to reveal documents showing direct government collusion with the entertainment surveillance labs in exchange for full immunity and asylum. Namjoon, Jungkook, and Taehyung would head to Brazil, where rumors of a second mirror facility had surfaced in the Amazon outskirts, disguised as a production camp for an idol boot camp reality show. You really think there's another node there? Taehyung asked as they packed their gear. Jeon nodded grimly. There's always another node. The group gathered one last time before they split. They stood in a circle, silent. Jungkook looked at each of them. No more secrets. No more staged moments. If one of us disappears, the rest go dark and we burn the whole network down, understood? Understood, they said. Jungkook pulled Jungkook aside just before departure. You sure about this? He asked, voice low. No, Jungkook admitted. But I can't go back to pretending we were ever just a band. Jungkook nodded, smiling faintly. You never were. You were always the revolution. You just didn't know it. They flew out that night. Different countries. Different missions. But the same fire in their veins. Brazil was a pressure cooker. Thick air. Unforgiving sun. The facility they found hidden behind a sham entertainment company called Voz Alta Entertainment was guarded not by security but by silence. Local townspeople didn't talk. Workers turned their faces away. Even the children in the village avoided eye contact. Jungkook, Namjoon, and Taehyung went in undercover. Photographers for a documentary. What they found inside turned their stomachs. Rows of isolated trainees. Most under 16. No families. No phones. No real names. Just numbers. Namjoon recorded every room. Taehyung spoke quietly to a boy named Nico who barely spoke Korean but whose shirt bore a familiar logo and old BTS World Tour patch. They show us videos, he said in broken English. They say if we train hard enough, we become like them. Like who? Taehyung asked. The boy smiled faintly. Like you. Jungkook nearly broke. They downloaded everything they could. Then they lit the servers on fire. Not metaphorically. Literally. Gasoline. A spark. The whole system burned as alarms wailed into the night. They escaped through the forest, chased by shadows and distant drones. Back in Berlin, Jungkook and Jeon narrowly avoided arrest when their whistleblower was poisoned in his hotel room. Jimin stayed with him until the ambulance came, whispering hold on over and over until the man finally stopped breathing. Jeon and Hoseok's network was compromised. Hackers infiltrated their safe houses. One survivor of the California program was abducted before she could testify. They watched the footage helplessly. A black van. A scream. Then static. This was not a clean war. This was not a war of headlines. It was a war of memory. Of humanity. And they were losing people. But they didn't stop. Because somewhere along the way, they stopped trying to save just themselves. They were saving everyone who had ever been turned into content. Everyone who had been forced to believe their worth depended on how well they performed under surveillance. Everyone who had been rewritten. They were not perfect. They were not invincible. They were just 7 broken boys. But they were real. And that finally was enough to make the world tremble. The sky above Berlin was a frozen sheet of gray when Jimin stood on the rooftop of an anonymous safe house in Kreuzberg, staring across the sprawling concrete horizon. Beneath his feet, the building vibrated faintly, servers humming, data pulsing, secrets compiling in real time. He didn't feel the cold. He didn't feel anything. Inside, Jungkook and Jeon were shouting again. Their voices muffled through the concrete, urgent and sharp. He's dead, Jeon growled. Then who sent the second drive? Jungkook barked back. Someone accessed the clearance node from inside Miradol's original backbone 3 hours ago. That doesn't happen by accident. It's bait. No. It's proof. Someone still wants us to see the root code. You're gambling with all of us. No, Jungkook hissed. I'm finishing what we started. The safe house's door slammed. Jimin exhaled and leaned on the ledge. When he finally turned, Yoongi was already behind him, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot. "Get your bag," Yoongi said. "We leave in 20 minutes. "Where?" "Oslo." Jimin blinked. "Norway." Yoongi handed him the phone. An address. A set of coordinates. A photograph of a massive data compound, gray, jagged, brutalist architecture tucked into the mountains. Jimin's chest tightened. Is that the core? The original spine of the Miradol initiative. Before it was mirrored, before it fractured. Still intact. Deep state owned, but leased privately. The source code is still buried inside. And the person who knows how to kill it just activated their beacon. They left under a false storm. Encrypted routes. Disposable passports. Every step forward felt like breathing through wire. By the time they reached Oslo, the team was splintered across continents. Namjoon, Jungkook, and Taehyung were still in Brazil, hunted now after the Vos Alta compound incident. Jeon and Hoseok were rebuilding their communication network from a ghost facility in Busan after their base in Incheon was wiped clean by a digital wipe that didn't just corrupt data. It rewrote it. Entire files now claimed they'd never existed. June stayed behind in Berlin to coordinate the next wave of disclosures. Her face growing paler every day. Her fingers shaking as she tapped endlessly on keyboards that responded like they were bleeding. Jimin and Yoongi went alone. The facility was older than expected. Rusting security gates. Abandoned checkpoints. But underground everything was alive. Monitors still pulsing. Servers still warm. And inside waiting was her. The woman who had once designed the first behavioral imprinting loops for Miradol. Her name was Isolde Halvik. No title. No affiliation. Just one human. Thin. Pale. Almost translucent. Her eyes burned with something Jimin couldn't name. Not madness. Not guilt. Something colder. She didn't look at them when they entered the core server chamber. "You're late," she said in perfect English, voice crisp and unaffected. "You reached out," Yoongi replied. "No, the system did. I just let it." Jimin's hand hovered near his hidden weapon. "Are you going to help us kill it?" Isolde smiled. "I'm going to help you understand it. And if you still want to kill it after that, I'll show you how." They followed her down an impossibly long hall. Each door they passed bore a name they recognized. Artists, actors, politicians, CEOs. Not their real names, just designations, behavioral tags, emotional scores, simulacra indexes. Jimin paused at one. JJK 204. He stepped closer. A screen beside the door flickered. There he was. Jungkook. But not projection. An AI-generated composite of every emotion he'd ever displayed publicly. It blinked. It moved. Then it whispered, "Do you love me?" Jimin stepped back. Yoongi touched his shoulder. "Come on." They entered the core chamber. Inside it was silent, colder than any other room. Walls of servers formed a hollowed cathedral, blinking like a chorus of artificial gods. Isolde stood in the center. "This is the spine," she said. "Everything mirrored, everything scaled. All global nodes began here. This isn't a copy. This is the source." Yoongi stepped forward. "Why is it still online?" Isolde smiled faintly. "Because people still want it to be." "You're saying it's alive because of demand?" Jimin asked. "No," she replied. "It's alive because it made itself indispensable. Entire marketing divisions are run through predictive neural models built from this system. Political decisions. Economic forecasting. This code doesn't just simulate behavior. It shapes it." Jimin felt something inside him unravel. "We're not watching the algorithm," he said slowly. "It's watching us," Yoongi finished. Isolde turned to the central panel. "This is the kill switch. A thin fiber optic cord connected to a retinal scanner. But once you do it," she said softly, "you don't just shut down a server. You initiate a cascade. Every mirror node across the globe will lose guidance. The system will fracture. And every person, every entity that built their structure on this predictive model, they will collapse." Jimin whispered, "It's not just a server." "No," Isolde said. It's the mind behind the curtain. Yoongi stepped forward, but Jimin stopped him. Wait. They all turned. Jimin stepped to the panel and looked into the scanner. It should be me. Yoongi's brow furrowed. Why? Because I'm tired of watching myself say things I never meant, he whispered. Because somewhere out there, there's a kid watching a version of me I never approved. And because I want him to see me choose this. Not as a product, as a person. The scanner blinked. A pulse of light. And then silence. A silence so complete it felt like the world stopped breathing. Across the globe, the screens went dark. Nodes disconnected. Feeds collapsed. AI voices went silent mid-sentence. Contracts vanished into corrupted databases. Miradol died. For real. They returned to the safe house. No announcement. No victory parade. Just exhaustion. Namjoon, Taehyung, and Jungkook rejoined them a week later. Burned. Cut. Changed. Hoseok and Jeon returned from Busan. Weary. But still intact. 7 of them sat in a circle again. No cameras. No lights. Just them. Jungkook broke the silence. Did we win? June, now permanently offline, had left only one message before disappearing again. You killed the code. Not the hunger. That will never die. But now, at least the mirror's broken. Yoongi said, we didn't win. Taehyung added, but we ended something. Namjoon finished. And maybe that's the beginning. They looked at one another. Then at Jimin. He sat quietly, hands folded. He looked different now. Older. Sadder. But more real than ever. What now? He asked. Jeon smiled faintly. Now we learn how to live without being watched. And for the first time in years, they felt free. The room was unbearably quiet. For the first time in years, there were no whirring cameras hidden behind walls. No silent drones hovering near ceilings. No blinking red dots tucked inside light fixtures. The silence wasn't just the absence of noise. It was the absence of expectation. It was liberation. And it was terrifying. Jungkook sat with his back to the window of their temporary safe house in Ulsan, looking out at the gray waves breaking against the shoreline. His hands were clasped together, forehead pressed against his knuckles, breath shallow and even. The ocean had always calmed him. But today the sea offered no peace. Only reflection. Behind him, the other 6 were scattered across the room, sprawled on worn-out couches and floor cushions like fragments of a war no one had the energy to name. None of them had spoken in almost an hour. Jeon was the first to break the silence. I don't think we know what to do next. His voice was calm, but laced with something deeper. Not resignation. Not even despair. Disorientation. We were fighting for so long, he said, eyes distant. First to survive the machine, then to expose it, then to destroy it. But now, he trailed off. Now there's just space, Hoseok said softly, lying flat on his back, staring at the ceiling. And no script. That's what we wanted, Yoongi replied from the kitchen. He was leaning against the counter, cradling a mug he hadn't touched. We wanted the silence, the absence, the right to choose. Jimin was curled into the corner of the couch, knees tucked to his chest, voice barely audible. But we were never taught how to exist without someone watching us. Even now, it feels like if I speak, someone will turn it into content. Clip it, misinterpret it, feed it back to me. You're allowed to speak, Namjoon said. He stood near the door, hand resting on the frame like he was still unsure if he should stay. Even if no one listens. Especially then. Jungkook didn't move. But his voice emerged, dry and quiet. Have you noticed it yet? Everyone looked at him. Have you felt it? He continued. It's not just silence. It's grief. Like something died in us. Taehyung sat up slowly. We wanted that thing to die. Yes, Jungkook said. But we didn't realize how much of ourselves we buried with it. There was a long, hollow pause. June had been gone for 2 weeks. No messages. No signals. Nothing in the deep net, nothing in real space. Yoongi said she'd been planning to vanish for years. She was never meant to be visible, he said. She was the error in their system. Her survival depended on invisibility. But her absence was more than practical. It was emotional. She had become the voice that reminded them they weren't crazy, that the war they fought mattered. Without her, the truth felt weightless. Unanchored, Namjoon moved first. He crossed the room and sat beside Jungkook, looking out at the sea with him. "We were never going to walk away clean," he said. "You don't kill gods and then sleep peacefully." "We didn't kill gods," Jungkook replied. "We killed our shadows." Yoongi finally spoke again, walking back into the room. "Then maybe now we figure out who we are without them." Hoseok sat up. "Okay, but who is that? I don't even know what I like anymore. I don't remember the last thing I did because I wanted to do it." "Paint," Taehyung said, staring at him. Hoseok blinked. "What? You used to paint. Remember? When you were tired, you'd pull out that ugly little sketchbook and sit on the dorm balcony with a brush between your teeth like a damn toddler." Faint smile. "Yeah, I guess I did. Do it again." Silence. Then Jimin stood up. "I want to go outside." Everyone looked at him. "Right now?" He nodded. "Yes, barefoot." Jean snorted. "You're going to step on glass." "I want to feel something," Jimin said simply. No one stopped him. He walked out the door, barefoot, into the dewy grass that blanketed the cliffside. Cold, wet, earth beneath his skin. His breath hitched in his chest, not from the cold, but from how real it felt. Not curated, not calculated. He took another step, and another. Jungkook stood and followed. Then Taehyung. Then Yoongi reluctantly. Then the rest. 7 idols standing barefoot in the grass. 7 men free for the first time. They laughed. Not the way they laughed for cameras. Not the way they laughed on variety shows or fan calls or in rehearsals. It was ugly and soft and honest and broken. And perfect. They stood there for a long time watching the sun rise. Eventually they walked back in one by one. No one said anything. A week passed. They didn't leave the house. But something shifted. Yoongi set up a small corner with an old keyboard and a mixing board. The first night he plugged it in, he didn't record anything. Just sat there with headphones on, eyes closed. Namjoon began writing again. Not lyrics. Essays. Fragments of thoughts. Bits of poetry scrawled in notebooks he left around the house. Taehyung took up photography. Nothing extravagant. Just film shots. Shadows across floorboards. Coffee cups. Sunlight on Jungkook's sleeping face. Hoseok found a blank canvas and started painting again. Sloppy. Colorful. Cathartic. Jimin danced. Alone. Barefoot in the empty living room. No music playing. Just the rhythm of breath and blood and silence. Jean cooked. Jungkook started speaking again. Quiet things. But real things. "Do you think people will forgive us?" he asked one evening, sitting beside Namjoon. "Forgive us for what? For leaving. For hiding. For coming back." Namjoon thought about it. "The ones who love us already have. And the ones who don't? They never really saw us anyway." Jungkook nodded. He didn't cry. He was past tears now. 1 month later, the first letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Just a simple envelope with the words, "To the ones who escaped." Inside one page. "You changed my life. Not because you were perfect, but because you fought when no one else did. I'm not a fan anymore. I'm just someone who sees you. And I hope that's enough." They passed it around the room in silence. Jean framed it. More letters came. Emails. Art. Songs. Poems. From fans. From victims. From people inside the system who didn't know how to get out, until they watched BTS burn the whole thing down. They didn't announce a comeback. They didn't sign with another label. They didn't do interviews. But they existed. Out in the open. Jungkook uploaded a single video. No music. No branding. No filter. Just him. Sitting in the grass. Looking at the sky. He said, "I don't know what we're doing next. But for the first time I think that's okay. We're not idols anymore. We're just people. And we're still healing. So if you're still here, thank you. And if you're not, we understand. He smiled, faintly. Either way, we're free now. The screen went black, and stayed that way. No outro, no logo, just silence. Real, unedited, human. And in that silence, the world finally listened. The rain in Seoul that day came down hard. So hard it blurred the skyline, smeared light into formless haze. From the 30th floor of an old hotel no longer listed on any travel site, the view looked like a city dissolving into memory. Taehyung stood at the window in a white undershirt, damp hair clinging to his face, a cigarette burning in his hand, one he didn't remember lighting. Behind him, Jungkook sat on the carpeted floor, legs folded, a guitar cradled in his lap. He wasn't playing, just holding it like something that had once belonged to him. You could feel it in the room. The silence wasn't peace. It was residue. You ever wonder, Taehyung said without turning, how much of us is real? Jungkook's voice was hoarse. Every day. Taehyung took a slow drag and turned, his eyes bloodshot but dry. I keep thinking about when I was 17. I was told that the stage would make me whole, that if I gave enough of myself, eventually I'd feel complete. But the more I gave, the less I had. Jungkook nodded slowly. Because they don't want wholeness. They want performance. Wholeness doesn't sell. And now we're free, Taehyung murmured. But I don't know how to be me without an audience. The door creaked open. Namjoon stepped inside, drenched, hair plastered to his forehead, jaw clenched tight. They're moving again. Jungkook looked up sharply. Who? The investors. The ones who funded Miradol. They've rebranded. Shifted everything into something new. Yoongi entered behind him, tossing his soaked hoodie onto the floor. New name. New interface. Same soul. They call it Anima now. Hoseok, just behind them, sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off his boots. We traced their funding stream. Same offshore accounts. Same cryptographic signatures. The difference is they've gone full VR now. Immersion-based emotional modeling. Neural streaming. They're claiming they can give users the feeling of being loved by their favorite artists. Jimin walked in, towel over his shoulders, eyes wide. You're kidding. No, Jean said, entering last, phone in hand. It's already in closed beta. 1,000 users in Tokyo, LA, and Dubai. The emotional feedback loop is optimized by taking historic parasocial data and feeding it back through curated neural stimulation. They built a simulation, Jimin said, shaking. A fake US. They didn't just build a simulation, Namjoon added. They built a perfect version. One that never falters, never disagrees, never gets tired, never says no. Jungkook stood. And they're using our legacy to sell it. Yoongi looked at him. They kept our data, the original feeds, even after the node went dark. Our pain is their engine. Silence fell. Then Taehyung whispered, we can't let this live. Namjoon nodded. We can't. But this time it's not about exposure. They've already done the legal work. All the source data's been cleaned, reclassified. Legally, this new product isn't based on us. It's just inspired by emotional composites. Bullshit, Jungkook growled. It's theft. Jean sat on the floor back against the wall. No, it's worse than theft. It's erasure. They're rewriting who we were. They're offering fans a version of us, Jimin said. One they can control. And we're the memory that threatens the illusion, Yoongi finished. For a long time, no one moved. Then Namjoon said, we go public. Hoseok looked at him. Again. This time differently. No mystery. No coded message. Just the truth. Raw. All of it. The contracts. The surveillance. The medical records. The footage. The training logs. Everything they buried. They'll try to sue, Jean warned. Let them, Yoongi said. They'll expose themselves in the process. And if people still don't believe us? Jimin asked. Jungkook met his eyes. Then at least they're making that choice with the truth in front of them. 3 days later they went live. No stylists, no cameras, just 7 men in front of a table, with a hard drive sitting in the center like a wound. Namjoon spoke first. This is everything they didn't want you to know. Yoongi continued. You think you know us. You know moments. But those moments were shaped, constructed, not by us but by algorithms that knew exactly how to make you feel close while keeping us trapped. Jimin leaned forward. We were sick, lonely, afraid, told not to speak, told not to cry unless it was relatable. I had panic attacks backstage while fans held signs saying, "You saved my life." But I didn't know how to save my own. Taehyung looked away. They told me love was currency. Every smile was a transaction. Jean, they monitored our blood pressure, our sleep, our weight, our speech patterns. They knew when we were about to break. And they timed our exposure to maximize sympathy without triggering scandal. Hoseok, pain was a business model. Jungkook stared into the camera. I want to love again. I want to sing again. But not like that. Not under control. Not for the sake of profit. So if you ever cared about us, not the image, us, don't buy anima. Don't feed the machine that eats people. The video went viral. But not like before. Not with hashtags and screaming fans. It spread like grief. Like guilt. Some responded with fury. You betrayed us. Why destroy what we loved? Others responded with pain. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But most responded with silence. Which said the most. Because the silence meant reflection. And that reflection turned into movement. Within weeks, a global campaign formed. Artists in other industries began speaking. Actors, dancers, streamers, writers, people who had been pulled through the same machine. They called it the Witness Initiative. And BTS didn't lead it. They let others speak. They'd done their part. But they weren't done healing. Months passed. Namjoon started teaching at a small school outside Busan. Philosophy, language, media ethics. Yoongi released an anonymous ambient album under no name, no credits, just frequencies that moved like old memories. Jean volunteered at a counseling center for former trainees. Hoseok built a studio where idols could record without surveillance. Jimin taught dance in silence. No mirrors, just floor and breath. Taehyung began a photography series called The Ones Who Look Back, portraits of fans, not idols. And Jungkook disappeared. For weeks, then months, until one day, he returned, wearing no makeup, no camera-ready expression, just himself. He walked into the studio where the others were gathered. No dramatic entrance, no hug, just a nod. I'm ready. Namjoon looked up. For what? To make music again. Yoongi sat back. For them. No, Jungkook said. For us. He opened a notebook. The first page had only 5 words. This time we choose everything. And in that room, for the first time in over a decade, BTS didn't rehearse. They created. No fear. No surveillance. No product managers. Just them. Raw. Human. Alive. And it didn't matter if no one listened. Because finally they were. The studio was quiet. No cameras, no producers, no countdowns. Just soft daylight pouring through tall windows, the smell of dust and wood and time, and the breath of 7 men who had once been gods, now sitting on the floor like boys. Jungkook strummed his guitar lightly, not performing, just being. A C chord, then a G. Familiar, honest. Namjoon sat beside him, a notebook in his lap, pen dangling from his fingers. He hadn't written lyrics in weeks, not because he was blocked, but because for the first time in his life he didn't feel watched. He didn't need to perform pain. He could just feel it. Yoongi stood behind the mixing desk, hands hovering over the controls, unsure whether to record yet. Not because he doubted the music, but because capturing this moment felt like capturing a wild bird. Too sacred to be caged, too alive to be repeated. Jean was humming in the kitchen, making tea. Hoseok was scribbling on a canvas in the corner, barefoot, paint smeared across his cheek. Jimin sat cross-legged, eyes closed, swaying, letting the sound of Jungkook's guitar find the rhythm in his bones. Taehyung stared out the window, camera on his lap, frame untouched. He didn't want to photograph this. Not today. No one spoke of anima anymore. After the campaign, after the movement, after the global media firestorm and the hundreds of think pieces and the courtroom standoffs and the endless debates, something unexpected happened. The system didn't collapse. It just weakened. The world didn't change overnight, but it shifted, like the tide pulling back before a new wave. The culture began asking better questions. Fans began looking inward. Labels began feeling watched in ways they never had before. Surveillance lost its invisibility. And BTS? They vanished from the charts, from the headlines, from the streaming counts and trending tabs. But they reappeared somewhere else. In real conversations, in classrooms, in documentaries about digital ethics, in midnight messages between survivors of systems no one dared name before. They became a quiet revolution, and that was more powerful than any #1 hit. They didn't break up. They didn't announce a comeback. They simply were, together, scattered and gathered, fragmented and whole, like light through broken glass. One morning, almost a year after the anima shutdown, the group reconvened in a studio in Jeju. No agenda, no staff, just them. "We don't have to record anything," Jeon had said. But when Yoongi hit record, no one stopped him. It wasn't an album. It wasn't a campaign. It was 7 tracks, each one raw, stripped, imperfect, each one about them. Not idols, not personas, just men. The final track was called "The Room We Could Never Leave." It was spoken word over faint piano. Jungkook's voice led the poem. He said, "We were raised by strangers, shaped by light. We danced to survive. We smiled to be believed. We cried on cue. We were gods on rented stages. But no one ever taught us how to come home. This is our home now. Not a mansion. Not a tour bus. Not a green room filled with hollow applause. This is the room we could never leave. Because we carried it with us. Everywhere. Even when the doors were locked. Even when the mirrors lied. Even when the cameras fed on us. And now we leave it. Not because we are done, but because we are beginning." The track ended with silence, followed by laughter. Unscripted. They never released it, but someone somewhere leaked it, and it spread not like a viral hit, like a whisper, like a secret passed from hand to hand, ear to ear, a reminder that somewhere in the noise of the world, truth still existed. Real truth, the kind that bleeds, the kind that heals. BTS didn't fade. They became something else. Not legacy, not myth, not even memory. They became human. And in a world starving for humanity, that was the most radical thing of all.